Hey guys, I may have just found the biggest contradiction in the world, being a Pokemon fan and owning a Nintendo Switch. Now we all know when it comes to Pokemon, the DS just did it way better. But is that the case for everything else too? If you grew up as a Nintendo fan, then you can agree that Nintendo had some absolute bangers up their sleeve during the DS era. But sometimes, well, I don't think they knew what they were doing. But I've learned that no matter how bad Nintendo does, they're able to bring themselves back around near the end of a system's life. And with the Switch 2 right around the corner, I thought it'd be a good time to put it up against its predecessor to see who really did it better, the DS or the Nintendo Switch. Digging deeper, I found out this question might be harder to answer than I thought, because while the DS has a camera and background themes and anything that gives the system life, the Nintendo Switch has games. Now, starting off with console designs, we have the Switch, and this one is kind of uncomfortable to hold. It has the same problem as something like the Steam Deck or Wii U gamepad, where it's just a little too big to really be comfortable. Now, it does have a stand on the back so you can set it up, and this is a lot better. It doesn't hurt your wrists like holding it up does, and you can detach the controllers to use while it's propped up. Overall, the Switch is getting a 3.5 out of 5. It does everything it needs to do right, it's just not comfortable to hold during long play times. Now, the DS is a lot smaller when it's closed. It's about the size of a smartphone, so it has better portability than the Switch. This one also has a camera, 2 screens, and a nipple. But all that being said, it's just a little too flat. No grips or anything. The Switch at least has the controller holder that has a nice design that can fit into your hand pretty well. But the DS just has an awkward design, and on top of that, the circle pad feels a little weird compared to a normal analog stick. I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. It's a lot lighter than the Switch and it makes it easier to hold, but the only thing that's holding it back is really how flat it is. And now for the games. Oh, thank God the Switch has these. For this, I'm going to choose 3 of my favorite games from each system and put them up against each other to see which one has the better games. Up first, we have the Switch, and let's start with Mario Odyssey. Now, this is one of those games that just had mountains of content. I mean, I've had this game since it came out, and I still haven't finished it. It's the Switch's 3D Mario game, and one of the greatest 3D Mario games, no doubt, and it's all thanks to the game's main mechanic. You can use Cappy to play as different creatures in the game, whether that be a frog or a dinosaur. This game really uses that feature to its fullest potential. And along with that, this has amazing movement, some of the greatest I've seen ever in a 3D platformer, no doubt, and if I'm being honest, there's really no negatives about this game. Overall, this game's getting a 5 out of 5. Next game. Now, when you think of good Switch games, one of the first games that probably comes to your mind is Breath of the Wild. It was the first game I got with my Switch, and definitely one of my favorites, no doubt. It's the first truly open-world Zelda game. I mean, you can go anywhere in this game, and there's so much to do here. I mean, you could do all the shrines, you could just collect treasure, or you could go fight Ganon immediately if that's your thing. I spent countless hours on this game trying to 100% it. I never did, but don't think that means I'm not qualified to hate on this game as well. Once you get into the game, it takes forever to get around the map, and it is absolutely massive. And on top of that, your best way to get around the motorcycle thing you don't get it until you finish the game. So what's the point afterwards? And on top of that, the combat feels very repetitive, at least to me, but I'm also just not very good at this game. 4 out of 5. Smash Ultimate is simultaneously the coolest and most disappointing Smash Bros. Game. No, this thing is full of contradictions. The combat in this game is so fluid and fast versus the older games, and everyone is here, but other than normal battles, this game is seriously lacking content. No hit the target, no smash run or anything like that, just battling and story mode. I mean, the game does have All-Star Smash and Cruel Smash, but those are just the same as normal battles. You just fight multiple people at once. Big deal. But at least normal Smash is enough to keep you playing for a while, especially since there are so many characters in this game. It'll take you ages to finish playing all of these. And on top of that, you have a story mode that is extremely fun. It's a bunch of one-stock battles with certain conditions, like your opponent is metal and things like that. Not exactly super unique, I mean, it's not Subspace Emissary. But it gets everything done that it needs to, and I have most hours in this game out of anything else on the Switch. Even after saying all that, I feel this game deserves a 3 out of 5. It's just lacking in content compared to other Smash games. While it is extremely fun, it can just get boring, especially if you've used all the other modes from the previous games. Adding all the points together, the Switch gets a 12 out of 15. Now let's go over to the DS games, starting with... Well, we can't all be winners. Mario 3D Land is one of those games I had a lot of fun with as a kid, and replaying it as an adult, well, God knows what I was thinking. This has to be one of the most generic Mario platformers of all time. This one virtually is just a 2D level where you go from point A to point B, but in 3D this time. Now, I used to play this game like crazy. I beat it as Mario and Luigi both, but playing it this time, I could barely even get through the first world. It's just so sluggish, and on top of that, the camera's terrible, so it's hard to even see what you're doing. It's just so zoomed in, and half the time it's pointing straight at the ground, and you're telling me I'm supposed to be enjoying this game? This game at least has catchy music and looks pretty good for a 3DS game, but besides that, it's extremely forgettable, and you wouldn't be missing out on much if you don't play this game. Especially if you have the sequel of Mario 3D World, which is on the Switch. Okay, we're just gonna give the Switch an extra point here, and at this point, just give up, DS. This game is gonna get a 2 out of 5. Yikes, that's gonna be hard to come back from. Zelda has made many great games, masterpieces even, but to me, none of them live up to the legacy of Majora's Mask. Now, before I even say anything about this game, just know I'm a little biased at this one. Now, this is one of the darker Nintendo games, the story being about a moon on its way to crash into the Earth 3 days from now. But that 3-day time loop creates a very interesting gameplay mechanic. With the game being on a 3-day timer, certain events happen at certain times throughout the 3 days, and knowing what events are going to happen, you're able to go back in time and intervene with them. And that's something I've always loved about the game. And additionally, there's masks, which you can use to transform into strange little fellas from the Zelda world. Now, when you first start the game, you meet Skull Kid, which soon jumps you and takes all your items. You give chase to him, and soon after, you fall into a giant-ass hole in the tree for some reason, and he decides enough is enough and turns you into a little wooden guy. A very simple premise, but that and the masks honestly make it one of the more unique Zelda games out there. 5 out of 5. Kid Icarus Uprising is one of those games that really only gets made once in a blue moon. It's a product of what happens when game creators really care about the game that they're making, which for Nintendo, that doesn't happen very often. From a game series that has 2 games in the past 30 years, I never would have expected them to put so much effort into this, but Nintendo actually showed us what happens when they mean business. This game, as far as I can tell, is one of a kind. You start each level flying through the air, shooting at the underworld forces. You either use the touchscreen to aim, which if you do, go get some help, or you can use the face buttons to aim your reticle. It only gives you 8 directional aiming if you use the face buttons, but it works perfectly fine still. But once you finish the battle in the skies, you take the battle to the ground. The ground gameplay takes up a majority of your time playing, which I have no problem with. The ground gameplay is where it shines the greatest in my opinion. Now, this game may just be a third-person shooter, but it's one of those filled with amazing characters, amazing music, and is completely unique gameplay-wise. And the feelings I had playing this game as a kid were honestly feelings that rival how I felt playing Pokemon for the first time. I still even remember when my mom got me this for my birthday because it left that much of an impact on me. And I think it goes without saying, if you haven't played this game, go play it. 5 out of 5. The DS gets an overall score of 12 out of 15, still half a point in front of the Switch, but we're about to find out if the DS has what it takes to hold the lead. Starting off with the Switch for accessibility, let's take a look here. Nintendo Switch in the search bar, and whoa! That's cheap. Gotta make sure this isn't too good to be true. I'm just gonna buy it real quick, and there we go. Now, if this is real, that would make the Switch's accessibility a 10 out of 10, almost guaranteeing its victory. But let's see what other ways there are for the Switch to be purchasable. Now, if you go to any store's website, you can find it almost anywhere. Switches are readily available for purchase anywhere you look, and the price is fairly standard for gaming consoles. It's going to run you about $300, which in today's market isn't cheap, but it isn't steep either. But as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty accessible. 8 out of 10. Now, the DS has to stand on business here if it wants to compete with the Switch. I need to see a good price and lots of listings. So let's check. Whoa. Well, it's cheaper than the Switch at least. While the Switch is around the same price, I feel like that price is justified because it comes with 2 controllers, a dock, and it doubles as a home console. But the DS is just a handheld, so $300 is kind of a lot for that. And on top of that, it's mostly just eBay listings, so you'd be getting a used one, which means it will have problems earlier down the line. But you can at least find them, so 6 out of 10. And just like that, the Switch won, out with the old and with the new, I guess. It would be easier to just let the Switch win and move on. But guys, the DS has Smart Girls Magical Book Club!